Welcome to WP Theme Tutorial, episode 22. Today we're going to actually start digging into WordPress 3.5, which is right around the corner. And what we're going to dig into today is two new tags, or actions we have in the WordPress post editor. We have two. We have one called Edit Form After Title, and one called Edit Form After Editor. Let's take a quick look at those in the core code as well. So you can see here we have Edit Form After Editor, a simple action passing no parameters. And then we also again have Edit Form After Title, and they are in the Edit Form Advanced.php file under WP Admin. So what are we going to do, or what can that do for us? Well, we can see from the first one, from Edit Form After Title, it's going to run right after the title on the WordPress post edit screen, and also custom post types, but before the built-in WordPress content area. And Edit Form After Editor runs just after the WordPress post editor, but before all other meta boxes, also available in custom post types. So let's start looking at some code. What I have here is a standard blocked out plugin, and it's already activated in my WordPress 3.5 development environment. I'm going to copy two basic functions into it to start with, just to show you where this content will show up. You can see all we're doing is we're calling, the first one on Edit Form After Title, and the second one on Edit Form After Editor, and then we're just putting some text out so that we can see where they're going to show up. And there you go. We have, this is Edit Form After Title, and this is Edit Form After Editor. Now, that's not useful at all to us. So why don't we put in a text area? A text area with TinyMCE is one of the prime candidates for this. TinyMCE does not play well with being in a normal meta box, and if someone drags it around, which meta boxes can do, it doesn't play well with that. It doesn't like being dragged around in the DOM. So let's start by just putting in a real basic text area as an example. So again, we're calling Edit Form After Editor, and then our function. And in our function, we're using the WP Editor function. So let's take a quick look at that as well. WP Editor basically just lets us call the WordPress TinyMCE install, or TinyMCE, a second time. It takes three main arguments. First one is the content, which is the initial content for the editor. The second one is the editor ID, like the HTML ID. And the third one is settings, which is an array of optional arguments, and there's a bunch of them. WP Auto P, whether or not to insert automatic paragraphs. Do you want the media buttons, the name of it, text area rows, tab index, and all that stuff. We're not going to deal with those today. We're just going to add the text editor. So that was saved, and we'll refresh. And you can see we have our initial content. Obviously, we have some spacing issues there, and really this isn't going to do anything because we're not doing anything on save, so we can type whatever we want, hit update, and get nothing. We're just going to get the initial content. So again, this is still fairly useless to us, but let's revamp that function with our next one. So we're doing the same function again, Edit Form After Editor, called on our function. But we're doing a few extra things in here. The first thing we're doing is calling a global of post. If you remember when we looked at the core code, we weren't passing any parameters through. So this function doesn't know what's happening. So we're calling the global of post because we're going to need that in a minute. And then we're setting up our nonce fields. Nonce, it will be for security on saving, making sure that someone's not trying to save from the outside or access any of this from the outside. And then we're defining our custom content. Our content is going to equal get post meta, and we're calling it on the global post, the ID of that post. And then if you start custom meta with an underscore, that means it's not going to show up under the custom fields. So that's why I've started it like that. And we're calling true. If it's empty, we're leaving it empty. And you can notice I've also added a header. And then we get into WP Editor. I also sanitize the data with WP Kisses post around my content, and I pass in my editor ID again. So let's save that and refresh. This time we have a nice header. We have our extra content. Now that we have our extra content because I had saved this before, so that field is actually safe. If I just add an extra character in here for now to show you and refresh, you You see we have nothing. So we'll leave that in there. So we're still not actually going to save. We can type again whatever we want. And we're not saving it. So let's go with our final function, which we're going to hook to save post. Well, if you've done custom meta boxes before, this function is going to look very similar to what you've used before. We're using a post ID and post. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to get our post object through. So you can see, again, I've called if it's not set post, global post. And then we start to look for our actual PHP post values. So the extra editor, which is the ID we used up here, extra editor, extra text area nonce, which were the nonces we set. We double check to make sure that the user can access this post type and can save for this post type, can edit post with our current user can function, and then we save it. So if it's empty, we're going to delete post meta. If not, let's update post meta, and then we sanitize our data again with WP kisses post. So let's save that now, and we'll refresh our screen. And now let's try. Do we save now? We do. Okay, let's make sure that if we leave it blank, it saves. It does. So we've looked at adding an extra text area with TinyMCE with our new 3.5 hook called edit form after editor. You could also, if we change it to edit form after title, it's not spelled right. So let's spell that right. And you can see we flipped it and it'll still save. That's it. Welcome to WordPress 3.5.